Hello, hardy souls. Count yourselves among the privileged. I hardly need to introduce myself. I know many of you. Bob Jolly, Athenaeum director. And in just a minute, I'm going to introduce our presenter, not our speaker, because we are in this together, Peter Gould. I will introduce him formally in just a minute. First, a couple of things. The sponsors, events coming up, and the introduction. Upcoming events in the reverse order. Tomorrow night here, this place, 7 o'clock, the Milarepa Center will present Venerable Losang Tendar giving a talk entitled Life as a Buddhist Monk. So, as Dawn Holt said, no Dharma, just the doing. So you could see that here tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Next Wednesday, December 11th, poet Sidney Lee will be here reading from his new book called Here. That should be a thrill. Thursday, December 12th at 4 p.m., the Cooking Circle program is Holiday Favorites and a cookie swap. So if you're not already, exchanging too many cookies, come on the 12th. That is 4 o'clock here. Saturday, December 14th, we'll have our annual Victorian holiday event with music by the Hilltones, North Country Youth Chorus, harpist Bill Tobin, and in a reversion to a former tradition, Nat Tripp will be reading from a child's
Christmas in Wales.
Thank you. Child's Christmas in Wales. He did that for years here, and then we took a break. He's back. Wednesday, December 18th, from 1 to 2 p.m. here in this floor, the Kingdom Mountain Dulcimers will play some holiday music. The best way to find this out is go to our website or ride the elevator up and down. Read every poster. This event, the Vermont Community Council's Humanities Council's first Wednesday series only happens because of the sponsors who make this happen. The statewide sponsor is the Institute of Museum and Library Services through the Vermont Department of Libraries. The St. Johnsbury series Underwriter is the St. Johnsbury Academy, and it happens here in the Athenaeum because of the Friends of the Athenaeum and Adler and McCabe, PLC. 2, our speaker. Peter Gould is an award-winning author and charter member of the 1970s Vermont Back to the Land movement. He has done more than 3,500 performances around the world and has directed 80-plus youth theater productions. He is the founder of Get Thee to the Funnery Shakespeare camps and received the 2016 Vermont Arts Council Arts Educator of the Year Award. He and his wife, State Representative Molly Burke, who is here, have 3 children and 3 grandchildren, all raised and raising in southern Vermont. And after this event, to revisit some of what Peter does, I urge you to go to Get Thee to the Funnery website and see the fun things that go on there. Please join me in welcoming Peter Gould.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're competing with Handel tonight.
Handel?
Yes. Where's he playing? A great many of our regulars are singers in North Country Chorus.
Oh, at the Messiah.
Rehearsing the Messiah.
They're rehearsing.
Yes.
Well, let's rehearse here a little bit then, too, okay? All right. Anyway, so I thought that the best way for me to introduce the content, the core content of what I'm going to do tonight and what I'm going to ask you to share in the doing of, in a completely non-threatening way. So if anybody's worried about being put on the spot, the guarantee is you will not be put on the spot. I thought that maybe I should give you a little bit of a background of who I am and where I came from in order, because, let's journey together back to when I was 15, 16 years old in high school. And 6 times a semester, that means 12 times a year, I would wake up in the morning with this feeling of overwhelming dread, because it was the day that the advanced English class, which I took with Miss Roth, had impromptu speeches, and I was a stutterer. I was one of her best students. I could have made some sort of a backroom deal with her to not have to do them, but there's something about people who stutter. They they don't want to take the easy way out. They just hurl themselves into one humiliating situation after another. There's about 3 million of us in the United States. And I would wake up with dread. I would get on the bus. I would eat a really lousy breakfast because I was too churned up to eat. And I would get there, and by the time I was in the English class, and we had to draw the names out of a hat to see who was going to be next, and we had to draw the name out of another hat. We would draw the title of what we would have to speak about for 2 minutes. And 2 minutes is a long time in theater. It's a very long time. And I would sit there with absolute dread, knowing that eventually it was going to be my turn, and that eventually I'd have to get up there, and eventually I'd have to draw out the subject of what I was going to speak about. And my heart was pounding. It was pounding almost out of rhythm. People who speak with a stutter have no mastery of rhythm. And I could look at the big clock up on the wall, and I could see the clock just going tick-tock with the rhythm of its own, and was a rhythm against what I was trying to do. My friends, and I had dear friends in high school, they would have their heads down on their desk because they were so afraid to go through this process with me. And some of them wouldn't even look. A couple of them would just sit in the back of the room and just grin. And I made myself do it because I didn't want to act as if I was special, right? I took my turn. It was always humiliating. It was terrible, but I also have my parents to thank, because I was born with a happy gene, and I had ways to deal with the daily humiliation, which I had in school. I'd ride home on the school bus. I'd get home. I'd open up the fridge, have a ginger ale. I'd sit down at the piano, and I would bang out a rhythm, and I'd sing. And I had enough self-knowledge to go, oh, you have a nice voice. That sounds good. I would actually drown out all the bad experiences that I'd had throughout the day by just spending a couple hours by myself, not having to deal with the clock, not having to deal with looking at people hiding out, not wanting to watch me go through what I was going through. And I over the years. So let's fast forward 40 years from then. I'm inviting high school students to leave the comfort of their homes in Vermont or elsewhere, because people come from all over the world to my camp. I'm inviting them to come to the Shakespeare camp and study how to speak Shakespeare with me. How did I get there? So that's my journey. Many students who've studied Shakespeare with me have written their essay to get into college by writing, "My mother dragged me to Shakespeare camp." I did not want to go. How was I to know that it was going to be the best experience of my life? I came of age during the Vietnam War. I was opposed to the Vietnam War, but I didn't know what to do about my opposition to the war, so I joined about 1 million high school and college age people all around the United States, and we came to every single state in the Union, and we bought old farms and learned how to milk cows, how to make cheese, how to make hay. And I lived on a farm for 9 years in the south of Vermont. My wife in the back has always wanted me to write the nonfiction book about it. You can get it. It's called Horse-Drawn Yogurt, and it's been out for a couple years now, published in Vermont by Green Writers Press. So there's a lot in that book that I could talk about, but I don't have to, because you're going to read the book and you'll find out for yourself. By the time I came to the farm, I still had not made a lot of progress on my speech, but I was able to speak very well to the trees, to the cow, to the hills. I walked every night. I talked with the dogs that followed me on my nighttime walks, and I began to be a little bit more comfortable in nature, on the farm, with the animals, in the barn, in the hayfields, with the sound of my own voice. And farm work was really important to me. I was one of the founders of the farmers market. in Brattleboro, which is now one of the most successful farmers markets in New England. And somebody moved to the farm and said, we're going to do Shakespeare. This is such a beautiful outdoor place. We're going to do Shakespeare at this farm. And I was like, no, we have work to do. I have to fix the baler. I have to make hay. We all have to make hay. What do you mean we're going to do Shakespeare? That sounds idle to me. How could I have been so wrong? I'm a person that really likes to look for signs and I really try to be clear about being able to see a friend who's put along my path who's going to help me get to a different place, a better place in my life. I'm always really looking to be clear about seeing a gift when one is dropped in your lap. But I missed that one because I was opposed to our doing Shakespeare on the farm. And in the first year, we did a Midsummer Night's Dream, and John Carroll, the director, asked me if I wanted to play a fairy. Well, that's fine, as long as I don't have to rehearse much, and as long as I don't have to speak. And he said, well, there are some lines. And I said, could I sing the lines? Because I knew that I could sing okay. And he said, sure, you can sing the lines. I was a head fairy who was the foil to Puck. And I would sing like, are you not he that frights the maidens of the villagery, skim milk and sometimes labor in the quern, and bootless make the breathless housewife churn? And I felt okay, and I began to feel comfortable on stage. I was also physical, and always, if you were born, let's backtrack. How many people were born with a problem or have experienced a problem that made you feel really, really upset with yourself and with the lot that you drawn in life? Have you ever had that happen to you? All right, then you sort of know how it feels. I had to, in my life, try to get around to the point where I could see that problem, not as a problem, but as a tremendous gift. If I would understand why I was a stutterer, if I would understand what this lesson was trying to instruct me, then I could understand everything. And it's wonderful when you can see some sort of a key that's going to tell you, oh, this is your problem. You don't know how to speak. You're going to get over this. And when you get over this, you're going to have the means to understand everything, not just this little problem that you have. I don't know whether people have had that experience, but all it takes really is getting to look at your problem from a whole different point of view. You're going to be hearing the Buddhist speaker come tomorrow night, and he'll probably speak to you about the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. The first noble truth is problems exist. I always say there's a problem, and when you encounter a problem, we can do this all together. You say, "Oh," everybody say that. Oh, so you see a problem and you go, "Oh, good." The second noble truth is every problem has a solution. So for that you'd go, So the first thing is, oh. The second is, You can figure out what the solution is. That's, aha. Everybody do that. So now we have, oh. Aha. And then you can actually take the steps to do the solution that you thought about that. That's voila. So it's oh, aha, voila. If you're a professional clown, as I am, and about 2,000 of those shows, which Bob said that I've done around the world, have been shows in which I'm silent, except for a kazoo in my mouth. The voila always turns into a whoops. And the whoops is your new problem. So it just cycles over and over and over again. So everybody repeat after me. Oh. Aha. Voila. Whoops. Didn't see that coming. All right. So the thing is, I had this problem. The problem is Peter can't speak. I had to get myself into the idea that every problem has a solution. I have a personal opportunity to figure out what the solution is. So the next year, when we did Shakespeare again, the director said, how would you like to have a leading role? We're doing Shakespeare's Tempest, okay? You can play Caliban. And you have to have the attitude. I was born with this attitude too, the happy gene, and also the attitude was, okay, if somebody offers you the opportunity that's really going to help you out a lot in your life, you must do it. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, you must do the thing that you're most afraid to do. And I did that in spades, because the next summer I played Caliban, and we built a beautiful island right a few feet off the shore of Sweet Pond, when Sweet Pond State Park actually had a pond. And we had a boat that sailed in. We had an island. It was beautiful. We went to Springfield, Massachusetts, and bought a truckload of dry ice and heaved it off the island right before the show started. So there was mist all around the island. There were 500 or 600 people in the audience, including my mother. And my mother, God bless her, had never heard me speak in public. And she'd only been around for the terrible times, for the times when, like when I was 15 years old in Sunday school, and I had a confirmation, and I had two sentences to speak, maybe one sentence, a 2-line sentence. And as soon as I got up to speak, everybody just went like that. And including my mother, including my father, who were so afraid that I might have a really bad experience. But they had given me a tranquilizer before that to calm my nerves. Oh, they tried everything: psychiatry, psychoanalysis, pills to make me less nervous. So my mother is sitting in the audience, and Caliban. So how many people know that play, The Tempest? He's a wild man. You can picture this island in the sea, where there's only two inhabitants of the island. There's a savage and deformed slave who's Caliban. He's not savage and deformed. He's only looks to a Shakespearean sailor or nobleman. He looks savage and deformed because he's wearing a loincloth. I made myself a buckskin loincloth. He has dreads. If you see films of the farmer's market from the summer of 1977, you can see me with my dreads. I thought I looked okay. But anyway, and the other inhabitant of the island is the spirit. Ariel, whom Prospero freed from a pine tree where she had been locked. She or he, we don't really know what the gender is, where she had been locked there, for 10 years, screaming to be let out. And Prospero, when he arrived on the island with his magic books and his wand, he was able to figure out a spell to free her. And now he had 2 slaves to help him earn the dominion over the island. And so he's standing there, and I was backstage hiding behind the artificial hill on the island. And I knew that my mother was in the audience, and I knew that 100 or 200 other people who knew me, but who knew me in a particular way, were there waiting to see what was going on. And I had pre-set a sardine right next to a rock beside the little bit of water that was between the island and the shore. And so this is what it was like. I was so excited. I wasn't nervous at all. Why didn't I have stage fright? I'll never know. Anyway, so Prospero says, "Come forth, slave, come forth." And I came forth, and I was like, "I must eat my dinner." Spit out the bones. "This island is mine, by Sycorax, my mother, which thou dost take from me. When thou camest first, thou wouldst make much of me, wouldst give me water with berries in it, and teach me how to name the bigger light, and how the less that burned by day and night. And then I loved thee. I showed thee all the qualities of the isle, the fresh springs, the brine pits, the barren places, the fertile, cursed be I that did so, all the charms of Sycorax, toads, beetles, bats, light on you. For I am all the subjects that you have, which first was mine own king, and here you sty me in this hard rock, while you do keep from me the rest of my island." And I felt so wonderful saying that. I could see my mother out there, and later on, people told me that she was just weeping and weeping, because she'd never heard her flesh and blood, her sons, speaking that way. So now when I do my Shakespeare camps, every 7 years that play rolls around, and I love to share that experience with the kids. And it's my feeling that when you're in a Shakespeare play, you have a chance to make a connection with the audience that's very strong. You might have just an ensemble role in an ensemble scene, but if you're lucky enough to have a moment on stage by yourself, you can make a connection with the audience, which is so psychological and so strong that you can really get the audience on your side, no matter if you're playing a villain, somebody that most people in the audience would naturally not like, and it's manipulation, because there are techniques that the actor can use to get the audience on the side, but even more important than that, there are techniques that the actor can use to bolster his or her own strength, to be able to speak out loud to the audience and know that exactly the effect that he or she is trying to work upon the audience will happen. So this is your lucky night, because you're going to learn about 7 or 8 of the techniques, and these are the techniques that we teach at the Shakespeare camp. And we have people who come to the camp who are really shy, who are stage frightened, and I don't want a big part, maybe I can help out with the sets. We don't have any sets. Maybe I can make costumes. We don't really do costumes. Maybe I can build props. Well, we might have one prop, but we do stuff in mime. We don't sword play. We don't want anybody to get hurt here, so we don't really need any swords. You can pretend just as well to have a sword on your belt. They say, well, maybe I can just have like one little line. And after they hear about some of the techniques, they get this feeling like, I could try this. We have kids who come through who have autism and who would never ever want to speak in public and don't really pick up on social cues at all, but if they're helped out, bolstered by the techniques that we do in the Shakespeare camp, they actually start to hug people, and they actually really zero in on you and begin to focus on you. So let's just examine a few of the techniques that I developed over the years. And I'm not original. These are techniques that I've studied, and somebody in some far-off place says a word, and I go, I want to learn more about that, and then I'm going to put that on my list. So there might be 2 or 3 on the list that I could claim some ownership of, but it's mostly you get the clarity to see this is something that I can use, and you use it. I think the first thing on your list. So on the back of the page that has my photo on it, there's a list of techniques. First one is premise, right? Right? Is that on there? We run a 2-week Shakespeare experience for kids. It's like 7 hours a day. Obviously, we're not going to do a 4-hour Hamlet. Maybe 2 hours, something like that. So it's my job to cut some of the script. Do you see that? There, it's on the other side of that one. So it's my job to make some cuts in the script. It's my job to shorten it up so that we can learn this play in a short time. We might have 5 people who want to play Hamlet. Fine, let's have all 5 people play Hamlet. When we had Macbeth, there were 4 people who wanted to play Macbeth, really a lot. So we said, okay, that's great. You're going to play Macbeth in the first scene, then we switch out. Actually, we'll show them in scene 3 the actual switcheroo, so the audience will hear you say the first line, and then you'll get tapped out, and somebody else will step into the play. Oh, there's a scene where Macbeth is in conflict about something. Maybe we should have you both on stage at the same time, and you can share the conflict back and forth. There's this other scene later on where he's trying to take an afternoon nap, and Lady Macbeth is trying to soothe him. Why don't we have all 4 Macbeths on stage at the same time? And the audience just loves that because they get it. And the reason that they get it is because we have clarity. And clarity is our purpose, our major product. And the way we do that is this first rule. premise. I'll cut maybe half of the lines of Hamlet because it's a long play, but every single line that's left has a reason for being there. Every single word of text that's there has a reason for being. And the way that we do it is the students have to absolutely swallow the premise and understand what's the scene about. What is the interaction between me and everybody else in the ensemble? And also, what is the importance of every single word in this line? And we call that swallowing your premise, so that you're so strong with this that nobody in the audience would feel nervous about getting to understand, because they know that they're in the hands of a master. With me, because of my speech problem, I had no rhythm. I just didn't have any rhythm in speech, and I was most upset in the English class because I could see the clock with its rhythm of tick tock tick, and I didn't have the mastery of rhythm in my speech except when I sang. Now there's been so much research about it. And people know that people who have problems with their speech, if they can only shift from the left frontal lobe of your brain and over to the right lobe where there's more music, maybe they can get more control of their voice. So we do a lot of work on focus, a lot of work on breath. Everybody breathe in. When you breathe in, try to get your shoulders out of the way. So just breathe into your belly. Like that, and then breathe out. Quite a lot of teachers say, why don't you breathe in through your nose? But I just don't see the point of that. If you're speaking with your mouth, and if you want to get some breath in fast, I breathe through my mouth. So getting your shoulders out of the way, only using your belly, take a nice breath in. And then breathe out. It also helps, if you're breathing in, to smile. Because when you smile, you're also making a connection with the audience, and also you're lifting your palate and bringing it up, allowing a little bit more space for air. So try that. Smile and breathe in. And then breathe out. It was the beginning of learning how to control my breath that gave me that first moment of aha. There is a solution here. My breath had been something which was so chaotic that I was afraid that I would never get control of it. But I was not stage frightened when I came out speaking as this other character. Oh, I was no longer me. I was Caliban, and he was a wild man, and he's a person now who's become one of my best friends, and I travel with him everywhere I go. If I'm about to do a performance and I'm feeling nervous about the performance, I can just call, hey, come on in, and he's there. He's this wild man inside of me, getting me planted on the ground. All right, and so breath. Focus is really important, and I'm working towards, with you, doing the famous Macbeth speech of is this a dagger that I see before me? All of these things, all of our techniques, breath, focus. So when you focus, you can focus with your eyes. You can split your focus, and you can be looking at the audience, but feeling back there, doing another focus with your hand. You can, if the audience is small, you can focus on individual members of the audience and make them feel like they're real important, which they are. And so there's so much that you can do with that. The Shakespearean aside is. You can be in a scene, giving a speech, and suddenly turn to the audience with a word, a line, or two lines, and get right back. And when you do that, nobody who's in the scene with you seems to even notice that's happened. But it brings the audience right into your heart. A technique that's not on that list is the projectional shelf. Projectional shelf being your ability to visualize that your heart is as large as your wingspan, and that your heart is like hearth, that you're inviting everybody who's in the audience into the warm place next to your heart. Why don't you just feel that for a moment? Put your arms out and think, how would it be if you were a stage-frightened person, but you're not going to do this on stage. You're just going to remember how it feels to look out and to sort of to embrace the audience, even the people sitting 100 feet away in the cheap seats, and draw them down into your heart like that. And that's the projectional shelf. If you teach yourself to care for the audience and to care for the people who were sitting the farthest away, you really can't fail. Another thing that's not on the list is the sign of the four. Everybody put your hands up like that, the sign of the four. See that? This is the motto. This is the gesture which we all do at the farm, at the school, at the camp. If you happen to walk down the street and you see somebody wearing the Get Thee to the Funnery shirt, which I have on here, I'll just show you a part of it. If you see that shirt, and there's about 60 of them now, you right away have to do this. Because everybody who wears the official Shakespeare shirt, and what that is a quadrant. You're just visualizing a sheet of paper, and the paper has a y-axis and has an x-axis, and you're dividing it into four. The first part is the heart. And some of these techniques teach you the projectional shelf, how to expand your heart. And the heart at the Shakespeare camp means you're expanding your heart to include everybody who's in the ensemble with you, the other people who are in the scene, so you're working hard so that everybody else will succeed. You're embracing the audience, even the people who are far away. You're embracing the person who wrote the play. In this case, a man who's been dead for more than 400 years. You're embracing the person who organized the Shakespeare camp and worked on the script so that it would just sing. And so we teach a whole lot of heart in the camp. The other thing is the mind. We challenge the students to learn a speech that, how many people here think that Shakespeare is difficult? That's cool. I mean, some people do, some people don't. But mostly, if you're 12, 13, 14 years old and you come to the camp, unless you're really different and really special, you think that Shakespeare is really hard to understand. And we're just about to prove that he's not. So the mind, the challenge of the mind is to master the text, to understand the premise of every single word that is said, and to understand every line that everybody is speaking. The other thing is the body, and I won't ask you to do too much body things, but we do a whole lot of body training in the camp. I'll give you one example, okay? Just so put the piece of paper down, and this is how you use premise if you were going to learn to do a simple mime. The premise of this is there's a wall there. Everybody say that. There's a wall there. Reach out and touch the wall. And when you touch the wall, you really work it. Work your hand. And when you let go, the hand just dies and it's dead. So there's a wall there. Oh. And then you see the wall. And then you put another hand on the wall. What's the premise? There's a wall there. And when you swallow the premise, when you believe the premise, everybody sees it. And when you let go, your hand really dies. So you're not carrying the wall with you back to your side. Hand on the wall. Lean to the side, lean back to the middle, lean to the other side, lean back a little bit, lean back, lean forward really fast, wow, oh, like that. And you maintain the illusion by keeping your hand there. So we do a tremendous amount of body training in the camp too. Every day of the camp, the other staff members who are very young compared to me, they're 27 or 28 years old. They know that Peter wants to teach a little bit of mime every day, and so they let me, and that's fun. But we do other kinds of body training too. So heart, mind, body, voice. Let's do just a very simple one of the voice training things that we do there. First of all, you do your face exercises because as a Spanish teacher, as an English teacher, I know that most people in the United States don't pay much attention to how supple their face is in speaking. So let's, everybody, if you don't mind smudging your makeup, just rub your face for a minute. Okay? Warm up. Okay. And then shake your face. And then we'll do the patented, get thee to the funnery, Shakespeare face exercises, which we do every day. So face up, head down, go, head to the side, other side, both sides, top and bottom. And let go. Okay, there's two important things to know about that face exercise. There's three important things to know about the face exercise. You have to do them every day. Because if you don't do your face exercises every day, eventually your mouth will turn down. And you can't fight gravity when it really begins to take over like that. And so you have to do them every day. So usually I tell students, okay, your homework assignment is do the face exercises every day for the next 65 years. And if you don't miss a day, because if you miss a day, you have to start over. And they go, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, but so that's the first thing to do. The second thing is face exercise is a really good example of premise. So the premise of the face exercise is face made of rubber. Everybody say that. Face made of rubber. So this time when you stretch your face, if you swallow your premise and you really think about that, you're going to be able to do it better. And the third important thing to know is sound effects are good, but silly sound effects are better. So now, keeping in mind, really swallowing the premise that your face is made of rubber, and that face and that silly sound effects are better than just regular sound effects. Let's do that again. And this is when the individuals begin to come out, because it shouldn't only sound like one voice. It's everybody. So face up, face down, and the side, other side, both sides. Like if you swallow your premise, then you know that if you let go, it's going to bounce back like that. And then we begin to talk about that. Well, how much would it bounce? And so we get into these very scientific conversations about how things work, why things work. Now that you've done your face exercise, I want you to do a repeat after me exercise of the alphabet. We're going to do the Spanish alphabet, okay? And keeping your face up and sound effects, silly sound effects. You can make the letters sound in your own voice the way you want, but just repeat after me, because I understand that not everybody knows the Spanish alphabet, okay? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and you can move your body too. I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. And we just do these ridiculous Spanish alphabet, English alphabet, French alphabet exercises. And it's my absolutely strongly held opinion that when the audience comes to see our Shakespeare play, we could perform the alphabet and they would love it, because of the fact that we're so committed and that we've learned these all these different theater techniques. Let me just see if there's any one that it's really important that we do. We're going to work on two speeches together. One of the really important things, techniques on this list, is called escalation. And it's really good to talk about that now, because winter has begun, and now there's snow. And we all know what it's like to roll up a snowball and stand on top of a hill, particularly if it's nice wet snow. It's just fallen, there's some grass and mud in it, and you start it off. What happens to it? It gets bigger. And what else happens to it? It goes faster, huh? And what else happens to it? It gets more powerful. It's faster, bigger, more powerful. What else happens to it? It does stop at the bottom, but before it stops at the bottom, it can even, if it's a rough hill, it can start to bounce a little bit, and you don't know if it's going to come right at you or if it's going to veer away. So we look at every scene And we even look at some speeches within the scene and say, how does this speech escalate? It starts here and it climbs somewhere else. And it goes that way with the force of a snowball rolling down a mountain. It gets to be bigger. It gets to be faster. It gets to be louder. It gets to be undependable, because the audience has to be kept on edge, not knowing what's going to happen. It gets to be kind of loco. It gets to be a different sort of a metaphorical association, and it's all happening faster and faster and faster. So this is one of the most important techniques that we teach. It's called escalation. And what do we have to have at the end of an escalation? I'll answer that for you. We have to have a payoff, because the audience is not going to sit there saying, okay, well, what was that all about? It's got to somehow pay off. Unless you give what's called a deflection. Unless the audience is going, oh, I know where this is going. I know where this is going. Oh, I didn't see that coming. So there's a deflection, like a payoff or a detour coming from someplace else. So the Juliet speech that we're going to work on has that in it. Does anybody have any questions so far or reaction? So is this okay? Okay, is it interesting? Yes. Okay, all right. So, what?
The question is, and I'm sure you're going to elucidate it, but how does what you told us, how does this relate to making Shakespeare understand?
Yeah, well, this is it. We're going to do that. But I can never get right to the core of a lesson without building people's expectation first. I have to escalate the whole experience of the students in the room so that it pays off with that knowledge. Okay, it's all about. I mean, actually, we went downstairs while we were waiting for this event to happen, and we looked at the paintings in the museum. And one of the most amazing things about the paintings in the museum here are the beautiful frames, right? I mean, these frames came right, as Bob said, that they came with the painting. They were done when the painting was finished, and the painting was put into these extraordinary frames. Framing is the last word on your list there. Everybody in the ensemble, they work together to put a frame around the place, the activity on stage that they want the audience to watch. It really bothers me if I'm watching a play and there are two things going on at once, and I'm like, well, what does the director want me to focus on at this moment? Maybe the director forgot that he or she worked with Joe and Tom over here for 6 weeks to get this moment just right. And they're ignoring what they're doing by getting the audience to watch what's going on over here. This is not good. This is not good. So all the techniques that are on this list are aimed at the final product is we put a nice, big, brand new golden frame around the place on stage where you want everybody in the audience to watch. And nobody else who's in the ensemble is doing something else. They're all sending their focus that way. Even somebody who is apparently doing something else, standing with his back, and chopping some meat at the important moments, all his focus is going toward the spot on the stage that everybody has determined that's what we're going to frame. And they've used all of the Shakespeare techniques that we've taught them to get the knack of how to build that golden frame around that moment. And it's foolproof. It really is foolproof. And you just send your focus. If you happen to be watching me and my back is turned, but my face is going to where the action is and where they want the action to be, then you will bounce off me in a second, and you'll go right to where the director, if he or she knows their chops, wants the attention of the audience to be. The other really good way to manipulate, and this is a kind, it is a kind of manipulation. The other way to manipulate the audience is with breath. We did the breath before. But let's just go back to breath. A breath in could mean surprise. A breath in could mean an aha moment of discovery. Breath in could be fear. A breath in could be, I'm getting ready to do something really, really hard. So I want to build up all of my strength, my resistance before I do it. So there's so many different ways that breath can be used. Breath out, try the breath out. A breath out means I'm relaxing a bit, so everybody in the audience can relax too. Scientists have studied what's the best way to use breath if you're trying to show a physical action on stage, and they'll tell you, yeah, okay, and even I, as a director, I've been known to say to my actors, okay, start the out breath there, but do the action when you're 3/4 of the way through the out breath. Don't go all the way, because if you go all the way to where the out breath ends, to where you're beginning to breathe in, then you've lost the audience, and you'll have to cycle through again. An example of that is like if I'm doing the rope pull like that, and I'm pulling like that on something imaginary, and I'm using silly sound effects. Like that, and I'm holding. There's no out breath at all. You don't see an out breath, and I'm like that, and I'm like that, and when I start to breathe out, if I'm somewhere between 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through the out breath, if that's when I let the joke take place, we'll get maximum reaction from the audience. Let's see how we all do with the Macbeth speech. I know this is new. And it's meant to be new. So take out your Macbeth script here, okay? Nobody's going to be on the spot, guaranteed. And I'm about to show you a few other things which are really, really cool. You have it there? Does everybody know the plot of Macbeth? Do I have to review it? This speech that Macbeth gives, he's really ambitious. He's been helped by the 3 weird sisters. Weird, not meaning weird, but meaning fate. The 3 sisters of fate have led him on to be even more bloodily ambitious than he ought to be. And now he's got King Duncan sleeping at his own house. And Duncan has already gone to bed. And Lady Macbeth has said to him, are you going to do this? I mean, you've got the knife, I'm going to drug the guards. All you have to do is go in and stab him, and you're going to be king, And so you can imagine if we've worked up to that point with the actors on stage, and Macbeth is standing there, and Macbeth is crazy, and so is Lady Macbeth, and there's a lot of breath going on. Now let's just think that. Of course, even more, you can create the atmosphere all around it with just a shiver. He's not in a beautiful old building like this with heat. He's in the castle up in Scotland, right on the ocean. There's no central heating. There's no heat pumps. It's freezing. It's a damp night. Everybody is shivering, and the only way that they've kept warm is to eat a lot of rich food and drink a lot of rich wine or mead, some of which was drugged, so that the guards are there. And Macbeth is like, he's shivering with a cold. It's almost midnight, and my actors are really hungry to do this speech. All right, and and there's one person playing Macbeth. And Lady Macbeth has already left. And there's a servant there, too, who's, he's younger and he's really scared. And Macbeth says to him, go, get thee to bed. And the servant is like, I think I'm supposed to stay with you. I need to get thee to bed. And then so the servant leaves, watching Macbeth the whole time. Now I ask you, pretending that you were members of my Shakespeare troupe at the camp, the script says, is this a dagger which I see before me? But tell me 10 things that Macbeth could do now that you sort of see the scene. 10 things that he could do before he even says a word. That's my first thing to do as a director. We're a physical troupe. We love Shakespeare, and we're not going to change a word, but there's so much more to do. There's so much more to do beyond punctuation, too. And we're going to learn about that right now. But just tell me, just holler out some things. What are 10 things? Just holler one thing. What's a thing that Macbeth could do before?
He can start feeling the dagger.
He could start feeling, oh, right, he could, because he is ambitious, he could start to work himself up into the kind of rage that you have to kill somebody. That's good. I never heard anybody at my camp say that. What?
He's trying to get at this, too.
Yeah, he could also show to the audience, and he's right here. There's a little spotlight on him. It's nighttime. There's just supposed to give the effect of candlelight. He doesn't know what to do. So he can show trying to build up the rage, or he can show I wish I was anywhere else in the world but right here. What else could he do? Actions that he could do.
He can be looking all around for, really searching into that darkness.
Yeah, he could try to see down the hall because it's this damp stone pathway down to the room. We know that we'll find out pretty soon it's stone. He could also look back a couple of times to make sure that servant who is really nosy is really gone. What else could he do before he says a word? He could take a deep breath, or he could take a deep drink. Maybe maybe there is a prop. Maybe there's a table. Maybe there's a cup. Maybe he can reach out and take a deep. He could drink something. Then, if he drinks something, there's a lot more that he can do. It can be stronger than he's expecting. He can wipe his hand. Anything else before we actually get into the speech?
He could rub his hands.
Yeah, he could rub his hands, right? He could
Mixed emotions.
mixed emotions.
To be reaching for the next step, but also be putting off.
Yeah, he could also feel that he has his knife there, where he's expecting. He could also take 2 or 3 steps down the hallway and then walk back. There's so much that he can do, and you get the audience so into this because they know, oh, these guys, they didn't just get lines from a script. They didn't just say, okay, here are the lines, learn them. They're actually getting so deeply into it that they're playing with us and painting the scene so strongly, even before they say a word. And that's what the audience wants. And then,
He's kind of ambivalent, so he's got to feel that certain
yeah.
look behind himself.
Yeah, looking back. And then finally, he takes a couple steps down the aisle, right? And we're going to all do this all together, okay? So you've got it there. And I want you to take a really deep, audible, silly sound effect in breath. And surprise the audience with how loud it is. And then you swallow, and then you point. And I always direct the audience. I've seen directors have Macbeth point out a dagger way back there. What's the good in that? The dagger should be hanging right over the audience's head, so that when he points, everybody in the audience would get a crick in their neck from wheeling around. What is he seeing that? Oh, that's right. This is a play. And of course, this is when I have to stop and say, okay, this is iambic pentameter. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. And there's some punctuation, but there's not much. There's no stage direction. Well, there might be 1 or 2. I've forgotten how many of these are real Shakespeare stage directions. Then you have to add your own punctuation, and you have to decide, is the punctuation that I'm adding, is that a breath? If it is a breath, is it an in-breath? Is it an out-breath? Is it exemplifying one of the funnery skills and techniques that Peter has taught? So this first one is and people, particularly young actors, they get muddy and they do it all at once, but you actually have to see it first. And then look, and then breathe, and then slowly say, and let's all say this, is this a dagger which I see before me? And there's a slash there because it takes him a moment first to see the dagger and then to realize it's tipped a little bit and the handle is toward it. So he doesn't say, is this a dagger which I see before me, the handle toward my hand. And every time that I put a slash in there, it's called a vector. And this is the vector training, which in a moment we'll actually get into it in a big way. Every time there's a vector change, that means that there's a change of direction in a speech, in a line. Maybe a new realization has taken place. Maybe he suddenly in some other scene, a vector changes, you're suddenly talking to somebody else. Maybe you've added a breath and you're talking more directly to the audience. But this is him realizing, oh, not only is it a dagger, but the handle is toward my hand. And then he actually personifies this dagger by saying, come, let me clutch thee. So could he maybe say, come, let me clutch thee? And sort of looking at the audience, so the audience gets to see the whole play of emotions on his face, he can trying to pull the illusion closer to him. Come, let me clutch thee. And then there's no stage direction here, but we have them reaching out, grabbing it. Then, so everybody, in your own time, reach out and grab that dagger of the mind. All right, you got it in your hand, right? And now open up your hand and see it. It's not there. Ah! It's not there. Oh my God, it's back up there. How does Peter get over his speech impediment? I mean, it's just, it's by imbuing every single word with real clarity, with rhythm, with understanding, with swallowing the premise, with enough breath so you never even think about that anymore. So try it again. Reach out, grab that dagger of the mind. You think you got it in your hand, and in your own way, with your own voice, open up your hand and see that it's not there. And then what? Oh my God! It's right back up where it was. I have thee not. So say that. I have thee not, and then jump right. And yet I see thee still. Right, and then that makes you. Then the vector change here is you're beginning to have an intelligent conversation with this dagger. Art thou not? Fatal vision, and that's a vector change because you're personifying the knife. And when you come to an end of a Shakespearean line and there's no punctuation, you just go right on to the next line. So art thou not, fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight? Right? Because why didn't if I could see it so strongly, how come I didn't feel it? And then there's a whole vector change because you're thinking about it. Oh, or art thou but a dagger of the mind? A false creation of the heat oppressed brain. Now we know that it's not hot in the castle, so what heat is Macbeth speaking about that there? The passion and the heat of this terrible deed that he's about to do. That's what's oppressing his brain. So he's thinking about it now. Or art thou but a dagger of the mind? A false creation proceeding from the heat oppressed brain. And when you see the ed, then you know that you say that as a three-syllable word. Oppressed, not oppressed. And then, why would Shakespeare say, I see thee yet? Well, that's just a rhetorical question. The reason he says, I see thee yet, is that Macbeth is slowly looking up and seeing whether the dagger's, oh, I see thee yet. So you can take a long time to see it again. I see thee yet. In other words, I still see it in form as palpable as this, which now I draw. But he even does a deflection. He's not getting to draw it yet. We've read through the speech enough to know that he doesn't quite draw it yet. But so now the knife is moving and it's pointing the dagger down the hall. So say, thou marshallest me the way that I was going. Say that. Thou marshallest me the way that I was going. And say, and such an instrument I was to use. In other words, you're pointing, now you become a directional sign. You're pointing down this narrow, damp, gray, shady hall where the king is sleeping in my security on the other side of the door, and you're showing me where to go. And that's exactly the kind of knife that I have here I was going to use upon my king. And then you wipe your eyes and say, mine eyes are made the fools of the other senses. Right? Say that. Mine eyes are made the fools of the other senses. And then there's even a bigger one. All right, if you rub your eyes enough, maybe this illusion, maybe this vicious hallucination will be gone. So everybody look up and see it again and give me a great big loud in-breath. And then really loud, I see thee still. I see thee still. Right. And now it's changed. And on thy blade and dudgeon drops of blood, which was not so before. Everybody say that. And on thy blade and dudgeon drops of blood, which was not so before. There's no such thing. It is the bloody business which informs thus to mine eyes. He's getting a moment of sanity here. No, there's no such thing. It's not there. It's the bloody business which I'm obsessed about, which is translating this and making me see this vision. And now he has a complete vector change, talking to the audience in a whole different way, in a whole different voice, painting the picture of what's going on at night. Now, over half the world, nature seems dead. And that sometimes needs some explanation. Why does nature seem dead over half the world? It's right, it's nighttime here, but that's only half the world. So Shakespeare must have known that the world was round, right? And the other half of the world had plenty of sunlight. But right over this, where Macbeth is right now, nature seems dead. And wicked dreams abuse the curtain's sleep. Say that. And wicked dreams abuse the curtain's sleep. Witchcraft celebrates pale Hecate's offerings. Say that. Witchcraft celebrates pale Hecate's offerings. There's somebody who usually says, who is Hecate? Hecate meaning probably the queen of the witches who's out there, and people give offerings to her so that maybe they'll have a spookless night, And withered murder, alarmed by his sentinel, the wolf, whose howls his watch, thus with his stealthy pace towards his design moves like a ghost. Wow, isn't that gorgeous? One of the things that I do in the camp is go, wow, isn't that gorgeous? It's just drop dead gorgeous English, understandable. He's making the correspondence between this evil deed that he was about to do with this dagger that he's wearing, and imbued with the added spice of the dagger of the mind. He's corresponding that to what the wolf does, stealthily prowling at night, about to do his deed that wolves do at the nighttime. The wolf meaning the sentinel of murder, of personified murder itself. Wow. I'm thinking about the wolf and how the wolf pads so silently across the snow, across the forest. Macbeth is given a little bit of courage, and he talks to the stones. Thou sure and firm set earth, hear not my steps, which way they walk. For fear thy very stones prate of my whereabout. The word prate, what does that mean? Reveal, yeah, reveal, tattletale, tell of. So he's thinking about the wolf now. He's thinking, I've got to walk really quietly. And he's speaking to the stones. Don't rattle. I know this hall. I've lived here, for 25, 30 years. I know not to step on that stone because that always makes a sound. I know exactly where to step. I can be as stealthy as a wolf. And then, whiles I threat, he lives. In other words, while I keep talking about what I'm about to do, the king is still alive. That's what that means. What other Shakespeare play does that remind you of? While I keep talking about what I'm about to do, the king is still alive. Hamlet, you're right. So I love to make these really quick correspondences between this image, this thought, and some other play that we know about. And Hamlet often says, words to the heat of deeds, to cold breath gives. So Macbeth is having a Hamlet moment here, And then there's a bell that rings, and it brings him even more to his senses. And I didn't bring a prop bell with me because you're going to be doing this at your own rate of speed anyway, and that would be really, really confusing. So he hears the bell and says, I go, and it is done. The bell invites me. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell. So he's hoping that the bell is not too loud, because it could wake up the king and spoil the deed that he's about to do. Does anybody have any question about any of the words in the speech? So what I'd like you to do, and this is the interactive portion. Could you all just stand up? Because when you stand up, you get a much better mastery of your breath. And let's all read it all together in one voice. We're going to read this through twice. This time we're going to read it all together, and look at the slashes, the punctuations, and that I've added, and think of it as a vector change. So and think of all the actions that Macbeth has done after the servant has left. And then we'll start with, is this a dagger? And I'm not inside of your bodies, so you're the people that I have to figure out, do I have enough breath? Am I straining my voice? Have I done enough vocal exercises for today so that I'm giving breath support? Am I doing, not only have I done enough face exercises, so the articulation is there too, so that every word that I say is clear. So then we'll start with is this a dagger? When you see that I put a bold font on there, a bold face, that's the word that I really want you to emphasize in the line. And let's do this all together. Don't strain your voice. Let's take a breath. And is this a dagger which I see before me? The handle toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, and yet I see thee still. Art thou not, fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight? Or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation proceeding from the heat oppressed brain? I see thee yet, in form as palpable as this, which now I draw. Thou marshalest me the way that I was going, and such an instrument I was to use. Mine eyes are made the fools of the other senses. Take another breath. I see thee still, and on thy blade and dudgeon drops of blood, which was not so before. There's no such thing. It is the bloody business which informs thus to mine eyes. Now, over half the world, nature seems dead, and wicked dreams abuse the curtained sleep. Witchcraft celebrates pale Hecate's offerings, and withered murder, alarmed by his sentinel, the wolf, whose howls his watch, thus, with his stealthy pace towards his design, moves like a ghost. Thou sure and firm-set earth, hear not my steps, which way they walk. For fear thy very stones prate of my whereabouts. Whiles I threat, he lives. Words to the heat of deeds too cold breath gives. Ding, 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 ding. I go, and it is done. The bell invites me. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell. Now just sit down for one moment. Does anybody have any reaction, any feeling, any new understanding? Yeah?
The last of that part, thou sure firm set earth, hear not my steps, which way they walk, for fear the very stones prate of my whereabouts. He's asking to be able to do this in silence.
Yeah.
So the rest of his talk is also
Yeah.
muted voice.
Yes. So that's very good. If you were directing the scene, you'd say, hey, well, why don't you try that? Starting right there, why don't you drop your voice down a whole lot more? That makes the audience lean forward even more to try to hear.
I have a drama teaching question.
Yeah.
I'm deaf in one hearing aid. I cannot hear people whispering.
Yeah.
And yet I know there is a stage whisper, which is
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, you just speak in the same loud voice, but you make it sound like a whisper, like that. So now we're going to add what we call vector training. And usually, of course, in the room where I teach, there are no chairs. So it's just a great big empty space. If you can imagine, I did this class in a high school earlier this year in Southend-on-Sea in England. And so, and when I was finished, I said, boy, your English accents are great. Because they were. And they said, this is how we talk, Peter. I know, I understand that. But anyway, so now what I would like you to do, and this is where it gets a little bit hard, but as I said at the beginning of the hour, nobody is on the spot here. Nobody's listening to any one individual. When this exercise is done right, it should sound like a cacophony of voices, because that's what it is. I want you on your own time to read this out loud, to understand the new punctuation that's there, to try to remember some of the stage directions, to see it, to try to remember to put in breath in, breath out, to try to shock the audience with giving them a deflection. You're escalating toward a payoff, but the payoff, the audience expecting you to see this, and you give them something else, this loud moment of in-breath discovery that the knife you thought you grabbed is not there. And every time that you look at a piece of Shakespearean text, you should look at it this way. Is there a punctuation? Is there a question mark? Is there an exclamation point? Is there a period? Is there a comma? Are there not enough of those? Is there a place where at the end of the line you just go right on through because there's no punctuation at all? Is there punctuation that you can add because you know that there needs to be a breath here? And every time that there is some kind of a slash or a punctuation or a new thought or a new vector, I'd actually like you to practice. And actually, when you're reading this, if you can do it, stop and turn your body. So you're teaching your body in this new special way to understand how things change within a speech. Because the human mind doesn't go directly through a speech. There's so many layers of thought going on. And that was one of the things that used to upset me when it was so hard for me to speak, because my mind worked so fast and it could never get beyond the fact that I had to keep one through line of speech, intelligent and moving from beginning to end. That was my problem. But you can use the vector training to show how indirect the human mind is. And every time that there's a punctuation mark or a slash, I would like you to just, as you're walking around, and this should be like a walk around exercise, I'd like to see you all just change. Don't try to read in unison. Do your own thing. Do your own voice. If you're somebody that responds, as I have had a couple kids in the class who, when this went on, they were like, I don't think I can take this. But after doing it 2 or 3 times, they began to enjoy it themselves. So let's all stand up. And on your own time, with your own voice, with knowing all these new things that you know, read this out loud, not in unison, not one voice, but the 15 voices that are in the room, and vector change, so you're moving around as you go. And I will give and I'll start with the first line. Macbeth says to his servant, go, get thee to bed. Now you're gone. Okay, go. You can have a seat, everybody, when you're done. Any response? Anybody have anything to say? What did you see and what did you like about what you saw? What did you hear and what did you like about what you heard? What did you experience and what did you like about what you experienced just then?
I need a lot of rehearsal.
Oh, yeah, obviously, yeah.
I love being able to go back over a phrase when I realized I had mentally not come into it. I was still on the previous part, and to give myself a chance to restate.
Yeah.
So that the fact that I wasn't working with other people's timing is extremely helpful.
Yeah, well, there's this wonderful scene in Twelfth Night where Malvolio comes and he brings the ring which Olivia who's fallen in love with the servant, the manservant who's really a woman, and she suddenly takes off her ring and gives it to Malvolio, who's supposed to run after Viola and give her the ring, and Viola says, "Fine, all right, I didn't." And then after he goes, I left no ring there. And then she goes, I am the man. I am the man. And then I am the man, you know? So there's, if we don't change any word in Shakespeare, I give my students full permission, if there's a really good reason to repeat a line, to do it. I see nothing wrong with that at all. So that's a very good point. And even if you do it a few times while you're just learning the part to really get it, and then when you actually perform it, going back to saying it once. But so that was a very good point. Anybody else? What did you learn from that? Yeah.
I was talking with my wife the other day about Harold Bloom identifies in Shakespeare's writing both two things. One is that it's poetic language, or prose in some cases, but in this case, poetic language, which for which the meter and the rhythms are important, are almost predominantly important. But when it's a text, when it's a score for a performance, as a musical score or a text, then things happen to the rhythm and the pacing that are a function of the actor who's doing it and the whole mood and atmosphere of the play. So
one of the things, and this raises a very good point. Well, one of the things that I'm trying to do with the Shakespeare camp, and now we've spawned other Shakespeare, Get Thee to the Funnery, Shakespeare camps throughout the state. There's like 6, there's been about 6 of them so far. We're trying to create next generation's audience for Shakespeare. And the way not to create next generation's audience for Shakespeare is to have 2 Shakespearean actors standing up on stage and just repeating Shakespeare to each other. I hate that. And giving the audience the impression of, I don't care whether anybody out there understands what I'm saying. I don't even care whether anybody hears what I'm saying, because I'm not in the scene with the audience. I'm in the scene with this person here. I want to jump out of my seat and throttle the actors on stage when they do that, because they're ruining Shakespeare, just like your high school teacher ruined Shakespeare for you. They're ruining Shakespeare for the people in the audience. And I've seen some really bad Shakespeare, and I'm not a hard audience to please. I directed a production of King Lear with my performing partner Stephen Stearns playing Lear, and I directed it with 25 teenagers. And because of we were doing it for spring break, and because of the schedules that didn't actually mesh, we couldn't open in the United States because we wanted to take the kids to England. So our first performance of the New England Youth Theater production of King Lear with 25 teenage actors, directed by Peter Gould and starring Stephen Stearns, took place at the King Edward VI School in Stratford. And it was awesome. Stephen did a great job, and the kids in the ensemble were wonderful. And then this girl came up to us afterwards from the audience and said, "This is so much better than British stuff."
Is that the problem with making Shakespeare a movie?
Huh?
The movie versions of Shakespeare are not often good.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, so I don't think I can do any more tonight, because I can see by the clock on the wrist that our time is pretty much up. I will entertain some questions, but the point is of the heart, the mind, the body, and the voice, and the point is of the techniques that you have there, and the point is you now have, on the flip side of the Macbeth script that you have there, you have Juliet's speech when she has been given this sleeping draught by Friar Lawrence. And I want you to practice this on your own at home, using all the deflection techniques and the vector training techniques that you've gotten. And the reason that I say the word deflection is that you have to look at the speech, and every time you're about to drink, think a thought. There's an awful thought. So you play with the audience, manipulate the audience so much that 4 or 5 times throughout that speech, they think you're just about to drink the drink, and then you stop. Well, there's an awful thought. And so that'll give you a way to really think about this theater event that you just had had here and then make it your own. Any other response, reaction, questions?
The question is there any other playwright besides Shakespeare that this you find works effectively, or is only Shakespeare's words so precise that it effective?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess that Shakespeare is what I know best. I've directed plays by Arthur Miller and Steve Martin and many others too. But this kind of vector training I've really only applied to Shakespeare. But now that you've asked me that question, I better go back home and think about that. Thank you. Any other reaction, response? The title of this was Lifting Shakespeare Off the Page. I felt I had to give you some background as to why this was so important to me. So do you get a better sense of how you could possibly lift Shakespeare off the page?
I know this, actually Shakespeare takes place in English. How about the old classical Greece by like Aeschylus and Euripides and Sophocles? Were they in Greece, were they similarly pregnant and poignant with?
It's really hard to say because nobody has ever seen one of those plays. There's accounts of people who saw it, but that was so different. They were performing in an amphitheater with no microphones at all. Their voices had to be heard by 30,000 people sitting up on these rows. They were masked. So there was never a Greek drama in my understanding of it where the characters were not masked. The masks were folded around the mouth. So there was a tremendous amount of performance value, like a bread and puppet does, with having to perform to so many people. So I also don't know whether vector training would work as well for that, because that was a different kind of speech. They declaim, standing with their feet apart, with the projectional shelf open, praying that they've done enough vocal exercise so that the people sitting far away can hear. Yeah?
Is the term vector something of your own design for this?
Yes, I think so, but...
I think of vector as a mathematical, a physical.
Well, this is math. This is science.
But each one of these slashes is also like a beat.
Yeah.
And there's 4 of them. It's just a longer pause.
Yeah. Well, I put those in just as a guide, and every time I do this, I would probably do it in a slightly different way. It's just a hint to you to think, how can I change my vector? How can I change my direction? Why am I changing my direction? Is there a breath here? Is there a stop? Is there an in-breath? Is there an out-breath? Is there a moment of discovery? You're always trying to take...
No, I think vector is a very good word, because vector is mathematical description of direction, change, and a force of that change. Yeah. So I think the vector is a good word for it.
Yeah.
I wasn't contesting it. I was just observing that another way to think of it is 2 of those vector signs are just a longer beat. A longer, this change from this language to that piece of language, it's going to take longer to sort out the...
So sometimes I have 1, sometimes 2, 3, 4, or 5, and you can try to analyze why did he do this. When you asked me if this was something which I made up, the vector training, I think so, and I've actually gone online to try to figure out if there was something that somebody else that I've studied with said to me that made me think of that, because you might find, this is stuff that other people do. That's great. You had a question?
What are some of your favorite plays at the moment by Shakespeare and roles, and what have you played?
What have I played? I mean, I've been in a few Shakespeare plays, but it's not as fun as being a director. I love to direct. I'll I'll direct Hamlet. I'll direct 10 performances of Hamlet, and I'm like, I want to see what happens next. This is so amazing. It's such a great feeling. It's and then once or twice I'm about to sit down, and I get one of the kids in the green room says, Peter, so and so is throwing up. He's sick. His flu. He's got the flu. He's just phoned his mom. You're going to have to play the role. Okay. And so I don't get to have the fun of sitting in the audience and watching my kids do their stuff. I have to hold the script and go. And it's not as much fun. Being in a scene, being in a play is fun, but being a director is really fun. And particularly if you're doing a play that you love. I love Romeo and Juliet. I've directed it about 8 or 9 times. The Tempest, I've directed 7 or 8 times. I love Hamlet, but in my book, my favorite Shakespeare play to direct is Twelfth Night. It's just fabulous, and to invent new ways to do it is just always a challenge, and it's got such amazing characters. I've directed it with 2 16-year-old girls who were best friends, pretending to have a sleepover in one of the girls' rooms, and realizing that they had to read Twelfth Night for tomorrow's English class, and they start to read it, and boom, they're off, and they performed the whole thing, every single line, and they played all the characters. There were some scenes where there were 6 or 7 people in it, and it was just 2 16-year-old girls playing all the roles, and it was awesome. So that's the most fun that I can have in theater. I also try to be, this sounds vain, I try to be the smartest person in the room. As the director, that's what you have to be. And I've been known to get really upset with kids, some of the kids. I try not to, but you have one speech. There's 30 people in this camp. I've given you one speech, one really good speech in one scene, and you're blowing it off by saying line, and then I say, here's the lines, and then I get up, and I don't do this in front of everybody. I go home and I go, I've directed her in that scene so many times that I know it, and then I play around at home directing myself in that scene. That's about as close to acting as I get now, because having directed the play, having worked on the script so many times, I know a lot of the speeches.
Are you still on a farm, and how is nature connected to Shakespeare with you?
Oh, well, that's a whole other thing. I mean, when I direct, any play that I direct, like in Vermont, we're an outdoor camp, and we sit outside, and we sit under the trees, and we perform outside. And if there's any line, any scene, any speech in the play that is referring, and people know that we're not in a hurry at the camp. We do a performance at the end, but we're much more interested in hearing what the young people have to say about life, about the planet, about climate change, about relationships. So if we're doing A Midsummer Night's Dream, we spend half of one day talking about how Shakespeare completely understood, climate change, but he didn't blame it on human intervention. He blamed it on the fairies. But we talk about this, and so I mean, it's true that it's not really a nature camp. But we try to have as much reference to young people's need to be outside, because I think young people in Vermont should spend as much time outdoors as they can. Yeah, cool. That's a good question too.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you. If you enjoyed this lecture, then you should make sure to make it a habit to come to the Vermont Council on the Humanities first Wednesday lectures. And if you have a friend in Montpelier, you can tell them that you saw that this lecture here this Wednesday, and on the first Wednesday in January at the library there, I'll be doing a repeat. Okay. Thanks for coming.